A young boy simply fell from the attic, but by the next morning, no one could wake him up. The doctors found no brain injury and no clear cause. It looked less like a coma and more like he was simply asleep. The calmer the hospital's explanation sounded, the more terrified Renee became, because the machines could only prove her son was still alive. They could not tell her where he had gone. His mother thought the nightmare started with a new house, but the real target was never the house. It was the empty body the boy had left behind. Josh is a middle school math teacher. His wife, Renee, stays home to take care of their 3 children. The family has just moved into a new house, hoping for a more peaceful life. The moving boxes have not even been fully unpacked, and the family photos have only just been hung on the walls. But on this seemingly ordinary night, the whole family is quietly being pushed into a nightmare. That night, their son Dalton walks into the attic alone. When he sees the light cord hanging above him, he climbs onto a wooden ladder to reach it, but the ladder has already rotted away. The moment he reaches for the cord, it breaks under him and he falls hard to the floor. Dalton sits up in panic. Then a strange noise comes from deep inside the attic, as if something is moving toward him in the dark. Josh rushed upstairs as soon as he heard the scream, but when he got there and asked what had happened, Dalton couldn't even explain what he had just seen. The couple assumes he is only shaken up from the fall and does not press him any further. No one realizes that this fall has sent him somewhere else. The next morning, Josh walks into Dalton's room to wake him up for school. But no matter how many times he calls his name, the boy does not respond. The family rushes Dalton to the hospital, but after the doctors examine him, they are even more confused. There are no visible injuries, and nothing appears to be wrong with his brain. Yet somehow, he has fallen into an unexplained sleep. 3 months pass, and Dalton still has not woken up. Renee has no choice but to bring him home and care for him there. She learns how to care for her son's body, listening to the breathing machine run day after day, while the house slowly drags her deeper into despair. Josh keeps going to work like everything is normal, but in reality, the medical bills and mortgage are crushing him. But what truly breaks Renee is not the financial pressure. It is the sounds that begin appearing inside the house. Late one night, while she is working on her music in the living room, a strange man's whisper suddenly comes through the baby monitor. The voice sounds like it is right beside her baby daughter's bed, repeatedly demanding that something be handed over. Renee rushes into the room, but all she sees is her sleeping child. There is no one else inside. She tries to convince herself that maybe she is just exhausted, or maybe the monitor picked up another signal. But that same night, Josh's younger son says he no longer wants to sleep in that room, because someone keeps walking around in his brother's room, and it looks like there is a person standing inside, but he is only a child. He is too scared to check, so he quietly shuts the door and hides under his covers. Renee tells Josh about everything, but Josh still refuses to believe anything supernatural is happening. He says it may just be radio interference, or maybe the children are frightened by nightmares. The more Josh tries to explain everything away with logic, the more Renee feels trapped in a house where no one hears her. What scares her is not that no one can see the ghosts. It is that no one believes she is falling apart. Then, a frantic knocking suddenly comes from downstairs. Josh has just locked the front door when their baby daughter starts crying upstairs. Renee walks into the room and suddenly sees a strange man standing beside the child. She screams in terror. By the time Josh rushes upstairs, the man has vanished. Seconds later, the alarm goes off downstairs. Josh runs to check and realizes the front door he just locked has somehow been opened. After that night, Josh keeps using work as an excuse to come home late. In truth, he is avoiding the house, and he is avoiding his wife's fear. But avoiding it does not make anything stop. It only leaves Renee to carry more of it alone. The next day, while changing Dalton's sheets, Renee finds a bright red handprint on the bed. It is not something a child could have left behind, and it could not have been a prank from anyone in the family. Renee calls Josh and begs him to come home. She does not need another explanation anymore. She just needs her husband beside her. But Josh does not come back until late that night. Renee finally breaks down and tells him she does not suspect something is wrong with the house. She knows something has already come inside. What truly terrifies her is not the ghosts themselves. It is that every time danger appears, Josh is not there. That night, Josh dreams of himself as a child, standing in a hallway filled with candles, while an old woman in black watches him from the darkness. Soon after, Renee sees a dark figure moving back and forth outside the window. When she finally gets a clear look, a man in black suddenly presses himself against the glass. This time, Josh finally believes his wife. The next day, he moves the entire family out of the house. Renee thinks moving to a new house will end everything and keep them away from those terrifying things. But only a few days after they move in, the strange events begin again. Renee sees a little boy dancing in the living room along with the record player, but when she walks closer, he suddenly disappears. The rocking horse is still moving, but the room is empty. Then laughter comes from inside a cabinet, and a child suddenly rushes out. That moment completely shatters what is left of Ranai's composure. She finally understands that moving was never going to solve the problem. The spirits are coming for their family. She brings in a priest and asks Lorraine to help convince Josh, but Josh still refuses to believe it. Then Lorraine tells him about the dream she had the night before. In the dream, she walked into Dalton's room and saw something standing in the corner.
I asked it, "Who are you?" And it said it was a visitor. I said, "What do you want?" It said Dalton.
At that exact moment, a loud crash suddenly comes from Dalton's room. Josh bursts through the door and finds the room completely trashed, as if someone tore through it. A comatose child could not have done any of this. He finally lets go of his doubt and agrees to bring in a professional medium. Tucker and Specs arrive first to investigate the house. At first, they are only there to find out whether this is all a misunderstanding, but their camera captures two figures that no one can see with the naked eye. Soon, the medium Elise arrives. The first thing she says to Josh feels like she is reminding him of a past that has been sealed away. She says Josh has grown a lot since the last time she saw him. Josh does not remember her at all. But Elise and Lorraine both know that when he was a child, he was haunted by the same kind of thing. Elise walks into Dalton's room, stares at the corner of the ceiling, and begins describing what she sees. Specs sketches what she describes, and the shape of a red-faced demon slowly appears on the page. The mood in the room changes instantly, because what Elise sees is not some vague shadow, it is something waiting for an opportunity. After hearing this, Josh resists again. He believes these people are using their fear to make money, so he throws Elise out. But when he returns to his son's room, he sees a drawing Dalton made before. The monster in the drawing looks exactly like the red-faced demon Specs just drew. Dalton had said that the night before he saw himself lying in bed, but he could not wake himself up. All he could do was watch himself drift farther and farther away. Only then does Josh realize that his son is not in an ordinary coma. Dalton's soul has left his body. What Elise brings is not just an exorcism ritual. She completely changes the way the family understands what is happening. She makes them understand that Dalton's body is still lying in bed, but his soul is lost somewhere in the dark. Elise comes back and sets up the ritual. Through a special method, she calls out to Dalton, trying to find where the boy is trapped. At first, there is a response. Dalton seems to hear her voice, but he is too afraid to answer loudly because he knows that if he is found, something will hurt him. Elise keeps asking questions, and the atmosphere in the room suddenly spins out of control. Dalton's sleeping body begins to twitch. Then strange shadows break into the room, as if they are all fighting for this body without a soul.
Leave this vessel! Tucker, turn on the light! Leave this body now!
Elise knows these are not ordinary spirits. They have been waiting around Dalton's body, waiting for him to become completely lost. She has no choice but to make Lorraine reveal the truth she has kept hidden for years. It turns out Josh could astral project when he was a child, but he has long forgotten it. Back then, an old woman in black kept following him. In every photo, she appeared closer than before. Lorraine was afraid her son would be taken, so she asked Elise to seal away Josh's memories and his ability. But the ability did not disappear. Instead, it was passed down to Dalton. Dalton went even farther than his father and became lost in a place called the Further. It is a realm filled with dead souls desperate to return to the living world. And now, the only person who can find him is Josh, because Josh has been there before. Looking at the photos from his childhood, Josh finally understands that his mother and wife were never being superstitious. They were trying to protect him. He also realizes that what he needs to face most is not a ghost, but the fear he has been running from for so long. Before the ritual begins, Elise reminds Josh that he has to remember the way back, because if he leaves his body for too long, something else may get there first and take it over. The metronome begins to tick, and Josh slowly loses consciousness. At first, he is still skeptical, but when he opens his eyes again, he sees his own body still lying in the chair. He quickly picks up a lantern and walks into the darkness. There is no direction, no sense of time, only countless trapped voices around him. A little boy appears in the darkness. It is Josh as a child. The younger Josh points toward the old house, as if telling him that Dalton is there. Josh pushes the door open. The bride in black flashes past him, and then a woman's crying leads him upstairs. He passes spirits frozen in place and sees a strange family repeating the final moments before their deaths. These souls seem trapped in the same nightmare. They refuse to leave, and they will not let go of any living body they can reach. Josh makes his way to the attic and finally sees the red door from Dalton's drawing. Behind the door is a deeper darkness and a path leading straight into the demon's lair. Just as Josh moves closer, a man suddenly grabs him by the throat. Back in the real world, Josh's body begins convulsing violently. Elise helps him break free just in time, and Josh finally pushes open the red door. Inside, the room is filled with disturbing dolls and blood-red light. Dalton is locked in the corner, with chains fastened around his feet. The boy nearly breaks down when he sees his father, but his eyes quickly move past Josh and toward the red-faced demon upstairs. Josh has no time to be afraid. He can only focus on unlocking his son's chains. The demon suddenly appears and throws Josh across the room. At the same time, the house in the real world begins shaking violently. Renai calls out to her husband and son from outside. Her voice cuts through the further and becomes the only guide they can hold on to. But Josh and Dalton are not the only ones who hear it. The spirits waiting to take over their bodies hear it too. Josh picks up Dalton and runs, telling his son to follow the sound back to his room first. Dalton's body reacts violently in bed, while the demon chases him all the way out, almost close enough to grab him. Meanwhile, Josh is about to return to the real world when he sees the old woman in black who haunted him as a child. She does not rage like the red-faced demon, but she is more terrifying than anything else, because she represents the childhood trauma Josh has never dared to look back at. This time, he does not back away or close his eyes. He screams at her and tells her to stay away from him. Following Renai's voice, Josh and Dalton finally return to their bodies. Dalton opens his eyes, and the whole family feels as if they have woken from a nightmare. Everyone believes it is finally over. But Elise quickly notices that something is wrong with Josh. When she takes his photo, she sees that his hand does not look like a man's hand. To confirm her suspicion, she raises the camera and takes a photo of Josh. The person in the photo is not Josh. It is the old woman in black who has been chasing him all along. After being exposed, the old woman controls Josh and strangles Elise to death. Renai hears the noise and rushes over, only to find Elise lying on the floor with the camera fallen beside her. She picks up the camera and sees the truth in the photo. Only then does she realize her husband has already been taken. Then Josh's voice comes from behind her.
Renee, I'm right here.
Because Renai hears her husband's voice, but the soul standing before her is no longer her husband. The scariest part of Insidious is not how many ghosts are inside the house. It is how the film magnifies the most real fears within a family. A mother is afraid no one believes her. A father is afraid to admit how helpless he feels. A child is waiting in the dark for his family to find him. Josh does save his son in the end, but the past he has been running from slips in at the very moment he leaves himself vulnerable. A lot of the time, people think moving to a new house means they can leave their fear behind. But what truly follows a person is never the walls or the windows. It is the trauma they never dealt with and the responsibilities they refuse to face. What Renai needs is not an explanation. She needs support and trust. What Dalton needs is not a doctor. He needs someone willing to walk into the darkness and find him. And although Josh learns how to be a father, he learns far too late how to face the fear inside himself. He has been running from it all along. That is why this ending is not just a simple twist. It is telling the audience something deeper. Love can push a person into the darkness to save someone else, but avoidance leaves a crack at the worst possible moment. When someone focuses only on protecting others but never truly deals with their own fear, the darkness will eventually come back through that crack.